Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of SteamWorld Build. Let's get the important bits out of the way. This game's worth your time, worth your money. I really enjoyed my time with it. I didn't have a review key, so this is coming out after release. So it's out now if you are interested. Having said that, it's also on Game Pass, so you can pick it up there. But even if you did pay full price for it on Steam, I think it's worth every cent and then some. Also of note, we joke about it, but I'm a reluctant reviewer, is what we're sort of calling it nowadays. In that, I'm not really that interested in being a reviewer. I find most reviews now in the game space, they're art students that are interested in writing essays, right? I have no script, I have no dot points, I'm just some goober with a microphone talking to you, fellow goober, about my experiences, and then you can make up your own mind on that. That's what I want from a review. I feel like there might be some people that want that as well. My only sort of scruple, my only rule is for every $5 I give a game, well, hypothetically in this case, because I did play it on Game Pass, but for every $5 the developer is asking, then I ask that they give me a good clean hour of gameplay loop. I don't think that's unreasonable. It's a pretty low bar to pass. This game is retailing at $43.95 Australian. We'll round it off. We're going to round it off to $45, and we will call that 9 hours. So I've played it for 9 hours, and I've enjoyed every second of it. I clocked it at around about the 7.5 hour mark. However, it does have replayability in other levels, and there's a little bit of meta progression. You unlock a special building for beating one of the maps, and there's 5 different maps, and so there is a bit there, but honestly, the difficulty was pretty pedestrian on default. However, it was fun. Like, a game doesn't have to twist your nips and be really painful and agonizingly difficult to be fun. Some games, that is their formula. But in this case, I would say I enjoyed that entire first playthrough without really breaking a sweat. I did screw my economy once, about the 3/4 mark in, but then recovered. But generally speaking, in the scheme of city builder type games like Anno, for example, it's drawing a lot from Anno. This is not nearly as difficult. However, that's a good thing. I'm glad that it exists. And if someone was interested in sort of I don't know what you would call it, an Anno-like, right? Because it does borrow that formula very heavily of here's your level 1 bloody workers, and then you get their needs, and then they go up to engineers and then aristocrats and that sort of stuff. The tiered workforce leveling supply-demand colony builder system that you see, this is probably the first one I would recommend to someone that has never played any of that genre and is just curious. No, I wouldn't call it super difficult. But yes, I would actually call it a really clean experience. It brings a lot of different things together and tries some different stuff, and it all kind of works and makes for a really pleasant experience. So yeah, so the SteamWorld series is ongoing. You've got SteamWorld Dig 1 and 2, which were sort of side-scroller, Metroidvania, dare I say, where you dig deeper and deeper. It's almost run-based within the game. You dig deeper. You unlock upgrades, you dig deeper again. Really good games. I remember the first one especially. I think I played the second one, I can't remember. But then they went on to do SteamWorld Heist, which same perspective, but it was more of like a party-based pirate game where you'd attach onto ships, and it was like a turn-based tactics game actually, but a big focus on like deflecting bullets off walls and that. Oh man, I'd have to go back to it because I really enjoyed that as well. But again, very different genre there. SteamWorld Quest went way different and was sort of medieval. God, if you held my feet to the fire, I'd say it was more like a Darkest Dungeon. You know, you sort of had your party on one side, their party on the other side, and you kind of just fought, and more of a turn-based RPG, I suppose. And then we've got this SteamWorld Build, which is absolutely a colony builder. They're all good. I've enjoyed all of them. This is particularly brilliant. It's got a skeleton of a plot holding it together. You know, you've got this orb robot telling your robots what to do. Essentially, he's telling you to dig deeper into the mines, which have multiple levels, and you want to get the parts of a rocket and put it together. Something like a Factorio, in a way, a Factorio light. Ultimately, you're just trying to find all the parts of the rocket, put it together, and that's pretty much it. All the characters are really colourful, very cute. They're all clearly, you know, Nordic people. I don't know, I didn't actually look it up. I don't know if they're Swedish or whatever, right? But they all have that Euro accent in the voice acting in behind American yeehaw bloody cowboy accents that they're putting on. It makes for a very, very strange Swedish cowboy sounding thing, but I kind of really like it because we've had a really good string of good voice actors in our reviews recently, right? And these people are just chewing up the scenery. They're endearing. They're great fun. So for what it's worth, for what it is, it does its job very, very well. It's obviously not going for Pulitzer Prize winning material, but I mean, who cares? I think writers in gaming are absolutely overrated. So yeah, that's great. The gameplay loop is kind of split between two main games. You've got the above ground town, which is straight up an Anno-like. And I know we covered off on that before, but you essentially will have your like base cast of worker robots, which require very little. And as you get more of their population into your city, then you unlock milestones, which will be now they have more complex needs. Now you have engineers, for example, are the next worker tier up, but then they require a whole bunch of service buildings and production chain buildings themselves. It's nothing really new, but it's clean. It's done really well. The second part of the gameplay loop is the below ground part where you dig deeper into the mines, and that's more like Dungeon Keeper, if you remember that. I think there were sequels, and I think we're supposed to pretend they don't exist. I don't know. I played the first Dungeon Keeper and I loved it. The whole idea of there's blocks all over the place and you click on them and your little miner dudes go and dig them out, essentially. So you carve out the space. You build sort of little room plots, just like Dungeon Keeper, that are the different casts in your dungeon space. But this is actually kind of a different gameplay mechanic. It's not tiered. They do different things. The miners dig, the guard bots fight, and they're great. They're all like, yeehaw, firing off their guns. And oh my God, the absolute character in this game is wild. But then you've got sort of worker bots that go and grab resources and man nodes, and then you've got like medic bots and that sort of thing. So you've got a very, very different system. It has some rudimentary logistics that get unlocked later with some very basic conveyor belt stuff, but I think it works for exactly what this game is. If you're expecting Factorio levels of autism in the urban planning and just micromanaging that you would get from that sort of game, no, that's not this. This is on the other end of the scale, but it's absolutely really good at what it does. So much so, like, I'm glad that it exists, because I feel like there is a bit of an arms race around that Factorio, that Satisfactory, that DSP, that whole space where they're, and don't get me wrong, I love all of those games, but they are so complex. It's good to have something in the same genre, the same kind of space, but at the more entry-level, accessible palette cleanser. I don't know about that, but you could just say more mainstream, actually, is a much better way of putting it. And there's more to it with the underground. Like, if you dig out too big a space, you have to reinforce the ceiling, otherwise you have cave-ins, and the cave-ins will make like monster things spawn that you have to fight, and you'll have doors, you have to uncover the switches. There's a little bit of an exploration puzzle component to it. The game really, it never really outstayed its welcome. I think this is probably worth really harping on about, that I just beat it before I finished my time with it, and I was left wanting to jump back in, but at the same time, quite happy to hang it up as well. Like, this is, for the price point, I feel like this is a perfectly paced game, which is something that's more and more rare. You get games that, well, I mean, an obvious example would be when they're too short and they're asking an unreasonable amount of money. I mean, it happens, and then maybe there'll be narrative or something like that, so they don't have a lot of replayability. But on the other end of the scale as well, you have bloat, you have artificial lengthening by diluting the moment-to-moment experience in the pursuit of trying to make a game that goes for 50 hours. And with the world of live services, and to be honest, a lot of gamers don't do a lot of favors for themselves because they don't respect their own time in the pursuit of trying to get as much bang for your buck. Often I see gamers play a game way longer than they probably should have, and they end up miserable. This is why you get dudes with 500 hours on Steam giving negative reviews. Now, part of that is your own fault for just flogging something so hard that you end up hating it. Anyway, I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent, but it is worth noting that this game, I think, is the perfect length for what it is, for the experience that it offers, and for the price tag that it asks. and it finishes in just enough time that you do want to go back in for some New Game Plus and turn the difficulty up, which I did, and then went to a different biome, which is cool as well, because you don't really change biomes in one of these playthroughs, not when they're going for 7 or 8 hours. Why would you? But there's 5 different biomes. They're all very, very cool, and they have different Western themes to them. But the economy is a lot stricter as well. You have to be a lot more frugal and sensible about your decisions. And it's cool that the game chose to end sooner so that you would re-roll into a harder New Game Plus if you enjoyed it enough, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe they added 6 or 7 more levels to the mine and tried to make it go 10 hours longer, and that'd just be disgusting. Yuck. So no, this is really good, and it gives me hope for the future. I like the idea of games that are potentially shorter, tighter, cleaner experiences, but not necessarily roguelikes, but they do have a replayability component to it, and that might be where the value is found. I'm not interested in playing a narrative that goes for 20 or 30 hours, because I wouldn't sit through a movie that goes for 20 or 30 hours, and let's be honest, there's a lot of TV shows that can't hold you for 20 or 30 hours. So why would a gameplay narrative not get stale after that time? These are big questions that I don't think anyone really asks honestly. What's my point? My point is this game is a good length and it has replayability, but even if you didn't replay it, the experience in and of itself for what's offered, I think is actually quite brilliant. Anyway, at this point, I'm waffling. Team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.